Like we're looking for people who's going to like have a conversation and or debate and actually subject their worldview to scrutiny, right? Not just presume they're just going to lecture us.
Yeah, but everybody I have that with them ends up becoming a terrariumite, just like me. There's no such thing as a Glober out in public.
You think it is a fake voice voter? I think some people just have silly voices.
Um, I never did. I probably should have, but yeah, there's tons of it. I mean, welcome to the internet, bro. You're talking like ICQ and Yahoo before
You're
MSN
talking nasally
Messenger was.
over enunciating on purpose. Purposely mispronounced. That's totally plausible. I wonder if that is true.
The worst part of the whole thing is that he started off that refraction was proof of globe, and then he said it wasn't the only proof of globe, right? So he like kicked the crutch out from underneath himself.
As soon as we exploded his presumptuous lecture about refraction, which is what they have to run to that because there's only two options available to them in light of the long distance observations, right? The longer, what I'll call the longer observations and measurements, right? They have to account for the longer observations and measurements, which are not possible on their SE, but of course they make it possible by appealing to the ad hoc rescuing device that is refraction, right? This whole this fictitious super looming and this whole pseudo lore about the nature of light. It's what you have to do if you want to clutch onto this and convince yourself that it's actually empirically veracious, substantiated.
Yep. They have to have so much refraction that the Earth would just appear flat. That's the crazy part.
Now, how long? Because history is important. Now, how long have they been saying that argument? Because I think they've only been saying it since like mid second decade, like 2015, 2016.
Yeah, sometime around. They used to call it fluff perspective, and they would deny refraction and say it's a flat earther argument or something like that.
Because like for
Around
500
around
years at least,
2015, 2016.
yeah. Because around 500 years at least, they've been appealing to the simplistic notion that bottom of disappearance, bottom of obscurance is bottom of obstruction behind the Earth curve. And then you have to account for why we still see with the aided eye, the longer observations and measurements. Well, now because of refraction, I don't think they've been saying this for 500 years. I don't think they've been saying it for 30 years. I think it's a new apologetical trick.
Well, for the anti-flat earthers, sure.
Yeah.
Whereas the actual, people that are subject matter experts dating back to into the 1800s, they will say it can happen, and that's how it happens. The deviation of light within a medium due to the difference in the refractive index, but they'll be honest and say that there's absolute limitations to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to allow. It's not just like a magic word you can say, and then all of the observation, like it's not just going to flatten out all the water in every single observation and make it just look like a flat Earth. That's not what
You can
they
see
claim
10 miles
happens.
further, 20 miles further, 50 miles further, 100 miles further, et cetera, et
Yeah,
cetera.
exactly. They'll say like something like it'll be like 7 to 10% in standard conditions, which will allow you to see a little bit further over the curvature of the Earth. And in extreme situations, it could be up to like 16%, 20%. Some even go up to 30%. But we're looking over distances that it would have to be thousands and thousands of percent, which isn't meteorologically possible.
And then, of course, demonstration. You can assert all these notions all the long day, but then you can press them to give a demonstration, and the demonstrations fail on every point of analogy, every significant point of analogy. Like the demonstration on a microscopic scale or a smaller scale is supposed to be demonstrative of the points that are in contention, right? So refraction is supposed to make the curved surface appear flat. No demonstration makes that apparent. The refraction is supposed to make the horizon stretch back into the background, not just move up a little bit, like in some of their pitiful little demonstrations. I just ascend the frame up to the top of the shot, stretch it back away from the observer into the background. Right? Doesn't do that either. It's supposed to also make the light curve, not just bend. They're hiding in that ambiguity, right? When they say bend, what they really needed to do is to curve around the Earth. No demonstration of the air doing that either. At best, when they want to show a light curving through a medium, they have to get a laser, right, which is a coherent, concentrated beam of light, not an incoherent, divergent beam of light or area of light like the sun, and it's curving through glass, which is obviously a categorically different type of medium than the air. Those are the main 3 points of analogy that they have to demonstrate on any scale. All right, but they fail to do it every time. They have no proof, no demonstration that refraction does what they needed to do to rescue their glare from the longer distance uh, observations and measurements.
I
That's the
found
end.
my best argument is asking them for the point of incident, and they lose their minds. It's actually kind of entertaining because they say it's refracting. Okay, cool. Now, where's the point of incident? Well, you're just making words up. No, you're telling me it's doing something. I need to know where at it's doing the thing.
Right. The
Simple.
point of the incident.
Right. I'm just a country boy, bro. You tell me the cow stuck in the fence. Which part, man? Where at?
The
The
middle,
east
the
field, the
end.
west field, the north field,
Exactly.
like in the middle, at the quarterway, near the northwest corner. Like,
Near
I
the
need
river,
data.
near the big boulder.
Right.
Yeah.
They just don't get it.
But again, anyone listening, the average person listening might get the impression that this is just an endless discussion that doesn't actually get to a conclusion. Now, the conclusion is this: we all live on the Earth, right? We've seen the Earth our entire lives, unless your eyes do not have the ability to see. Okay, we've seen the Earth our entire lives. Some have seen more of the Earth than others. But regardless, conclusion is this: do we actually ever observe curvature? Right? Do we observe the entailments of the Earth being a ball? Well, the entailments are what they are of the Earth being a ball. We don't observe them, right? We observe farther than what's possible on their ball, which proves that the horizon is not the horizon of their ball, which is why I call it the SEH, spheroidal Earth horizon. Their term is geometric horizon, which is again not very precise analytically, but it's more precise because it's the horizon that they need it to be, or that it's entailed by their specific doctrine about the Earth. So their SE entails the SEH. The spheroidal Earth entails the spheroidal Earth horizon. They need that line, that is the water or whatever, what have you, easily the water for people to understand. They need that water line to be that line that is the surface of the Earth wrapped around, right? The surface of the water, the oceans wrapped around the lopsided rock that allegedly is wrapped around, and it allegedly is flying around through the cosmic void, right? We all understand that. Okay, that's supposed to be, as it were, the summit or the peak or the pinnacle of the water hill, so to speak. Right? The oceans are wrapped around the ball. They need that line to be that cutoff point, right, of the water hill. That's what they need. But we see further then what's possible with those entailments? So obviously the horizon is not that physical external geometric feature of this water wrapping around this rock that falsifies what their SE entails the horizon to be. And so propositions that imply false implications are false. If you falsify the entailments of a given proposition, that falsifies the given proposition. So if you falsify the SEH, the spheroidal horizon, which is an entailment of the SE, then you falsify the SE. That's the conclusion.
Hello, guys. Earth is completely sphere, bro. It's not flat, it's sphere. Fucking
Cool.
eat it.
Okay. So you believe the Earth's a ball. We're gonna see how you
Do you
reply.
have any proof that the
You
Earth
might,
is flat?
but hang on. So you believe the Earth's a ball. Okay. Do you have? Because we're gonna cut to the chase, right? See what you understand. If you don't understand this, then we might have to teach you some things. So you believe the Earth's a ball. Okay. So do you have the measurement to the geometric horizon? The measurement of the distance to the geometric horizon. Can you present that to us? Be that.
What? Repeat again.
Do you have demonstration of the distance to the geometric horizon from any point being measured? If you do, show it to us. Okay, that's your answer.
I'm excited about the new 5th gen optics because, well, there's no need for light.
Is anti-globalist talking? Is DJ talking to Parixit or Parixit? DJ, did you say did you say it? What did I say? Did you say getting VC plus to Parixit, DJ?
Oh yeah, just whichever glow. I thought someone was talking crap about us, about echo chamber or something, but turns out he was talking about some Hindu argument in some other channel. So ignore that.
You know what's funny? The thermal optics are so good now, you could get a pretty good long distance observation, 2,800 yards. I'm liking that. I'm really liking that.
This dude is haunting me. My DMs, freaking storm, asinine, a clutter of symbols in his account name. Spot.
Welcome to the fan club, I guess. I don't know. We all get them.
Right, that's the issue. The globalists, the globers, the SE believers, the spheroidal Earth believers, those who believe the Earth is a ball. You need demonstration of measurement to the distance to the geometric horizon. What you need. That's the symmetry breaker. You need exclusive proof. You need evidence that is exclusively indicative of the Earth being a ball.
But Gregory, I never got to dive into my stuff with any of the Globers. I could actually beat them at their own game, but they're not going to like it.
Of course they won't.
Because a terrarium requires a covering that has to be solid, right, to maintain the pressure. Well,
Yeah.
what if just one side of what we have is just the whole of another side of something we don't know about yet? Just part. Always kind of thought that whole Helmgard Asgard thing was interesting.
FE simply requires the absence of curvature. SE requires the presence of curvature. They require direct, exclusive proof, something that is exclusively indicative of the Earth being a ball. So once they get the direct demonstration of the distance to the geometric horizon, so-called, according to their clerics, then they'll actually have a case. Then they actually have legs to stand on. Because without that, all they have is weak induction and or from the consequent that just reinterprets all the phenomena, but is not exclusively indicative of their clerk.
They also don't have a.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Greg. Well, I was just going to say what the crazy thing is with all of their refraction claims. You would think that they would have one observation throughout all of history where one person's gone out and perfectly accounted for the so-called refraction that they're claiming, and that it matches up with the globe. They don't have that. They don't have a single account of that throughout all of history, not one person.
One. Not one.
The earth is flat because if we had any middle-aged pastors here, he would say so.
What?
Yeah, so you're mocking the FE premise as though it's some sort of medieval nonsense that we've been graduated beyond, of course, according to your worldview. So let's cut to the chase. Do you have demonstration of the geometric horizon, right? Do you have direct measurement of the distance to the geometric horizon? Talking to you, Jothane.
Yeah, can you say it again?
Do you have at least one demonstration of the distance to the geometric horizon being measured?
I mean, I probably do, but like if I look up for it, I probably do.
Okay, so you don't have it now. You have to go find it.
I mean, I don't
If
have
it
it
actually
saved on
exists.
my computer's hard drive.
Yeah, okay. So you don't have it now. You have to go find it.
I don't have it printed on some
Open
A4
it.
paper either.
Okay, yeah, okay, I got it. Okay, so you don't have it now. You have to try to go find it if it exists. Okay.
Explain what happens in it. Jothane, just tell us about it. What do they do in the
I don't
test
know,
that
bro.
you're talking
I'm just
about?
trying to fuck around. I'm not really serious about the
Yeah.
float or global
Alright.
thing. Yeah.
All right. Anyways,
Yeah, you guys keep with your talk. Yeah, ignore me. Okay.
all right.
Will do. Thank you. So yeah, in India just made an observation that like completely destroys any of their refraction claims. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's a pretty good one.
Show us.
Yeah, I'll just I'll pop it in the side chat in screenshots. 1 second. So he used he went to the ocean and he waited for a day where he knew the water temperature and the air temperature were going to be exactly the same. And he took there was like a buoy out in the ocean that measured the water temperature and the air temperature. So the water temperature and the air temperature are both 45 degrees. 1 second, right? So they say what causes their refraction is a change in the vertical temperature gradient, which is going to change the refractive index, and then the light's going to deviate towards the more dense portion of the refractive index. So it's not possible for that to happen if you don't have the conditions that would cause that change in temperature that's going to cause the light to deviate. So he's negated that, and then he's also used an infrared camera which cuts through refraction. So he's got an infrared, he's got equal water and air temperatures, and then he's got a boat at 10 miles that he tracked on shipping radar. And you can see the whole boat. You can even see the whitewash, because the boat's moving, so you can see the whitewash from the waves at the base of the boat. 15-foot observation height. Yeah, it's a great observation. I'll post some stuff. Yeah, I'm just looking for it. Oh yeah, here it is. All right. And then I'll get into like how much refraction would have to be present according to their begging the question globe Earth version of refraction. Okay, so here is the here's the footage from the zoom. Whoops. Second. Oh crap, hold on a second. Yeah, I can't copy paste from the browser version of Discord. All right, give me a second. So yeah, if you're on the browser version of Discord and you right click on a GIF, and then there's no option to like copy it and then paste it into a chat. But in the application version on desktop, you can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, just a second. All right. All right, so here's his camera footage, video footage. Here's the ship tracking screenshot from the radar. Scarlet Isabella is the name of the ship that we can see there.
ISA Bella.
Uh-huh. And yeah, that's that red circle. That's where the horizon should be. So yeah, I think about the bottom 20, 30 foot or something like that of the bottom of the ship should be hidden behind that horizon. But if you put this observation into Walter Bisland's advanced Earth curvature calculator that has the begging the question refraction slider, you have to slide the refraction slider almost up to full, right? So you would have to have a refraction coefficient of 0.84, which is like a K factor of 5.5, which means that the radius of the globe would be something like over 20,000 miles for this to work on a globe. So it's kind of ridiculous, that whole begging the question refraction slider, which basically all it does is it just increases the radius of the globe to allow the observation to work.
Yeah. Increasing the radius.
So you have to slide it up to a 20,000 mile radius globe for this observation to work on a globe.
Even in his in his own little simulator system, to adjust the refraction is is going to change the radius of the freaking Earth, which is what their pattern of argumentation would entail without their ad hoc appeal to refraction. That's funny.
Yep, here's the screenshot from Walter Bislin's calculator. Yep, so I had to slide that red slider all the way up to almost full. Okay, and Walter Bislin says that once it's at full, the radius would be so big that it would just look completely flat. The Earth would just appear flat. So most of the observations that you put in, you have to slide it up to the flat setting. Like if you put in the Black Swan, or you put in the Great Salt Lake, Utah one, where you can see 21 miles from 5-foot height, shoreline to shoreline, you have to have so much refraction that the Earth would just appear completely flat. It's freaking insane.
And that's what it comes down to. With FE, all you have to do is account for the shorter observations. There is refraction. Refraction actually accounts for that on the horizontal surface of the Earth, on a FE. There's sinking. And all the other factors of visibility. Because both positions have to account for the two categories of observations, the longer and the shorter. So like I just said, with the FE, you just have to, the more difficult issue is accounting for the shorter observations and measurements. Just sinking, just refraction, and and the other factors upon visibility, right? That's actually plausible. It's actually far more plausible, just on that level, let alone what we actually demonstrate. The greater issue is for the SE. It's easy to account for the shorter observations and measurements on the SE. They cannot account for the longer observations and measurements for the SE. Right? The fact that the horizon moves here, there, and everywhere based on various atmospheric conditions, you only have two options. Either the horizon that is allegedly the SEH, right, the edge of the ball, is radically increasing and decreasing its size. That's asinine. They all know that. They don't welcome that entailment, so they don't go that route in their logic train, in their logic line. So then it's illusory. It's illusory because refraction. But again, refraction, they have no demonstration that what is rightfully mocked as superlooming actually occurs. All their demonstrations on any scale fail on all three major points of analogy.
Exactly. Great point. Yep, they can't replicate it on a smaller scale. But we can absolutely replicate what we're claiming, or what even the mainstream claims is sinking. Like there's a channel called Skyfree, and they replicate that hundreds of times on a small scale flat surface. All they're doing is adjusting the temperature into the condition that would cause a bit of sinking to happen. And all of a sudden, you see things start to disappear behind a horizon over a flat surface. Something that is completely inside, all of a sudden, looks like it's dipping behind the horizon. Even though the line of sight is geometrically unobstructed, it looks like it's sinking.
Yep. So we can account for both types of observations and measurements, the longer and shorter. The SE cannot. They can account for the shorter. They cannot account for the longer. They'd have to result to asinine rhetoric, abusing refraction, the type of refractive phenomenon that is rightfully mocked to be superlooming, no demonstration of it, and wandering into all sorts of stupid rhetoric where you can see the back of your head, Rufus, if the atmospheric conditions and all these things are just right. You can see the back of your head facing forward, facing whatever direction you're facing. It's ridiculous. No matter how far away we observe, it will never falsify the SE with the SE devotees, the devotees to SE. That exposes that they're not actually trying to scrutinize their worldview. They just emotionally clutch to it.
This is a good challenge, actually, for the globe earthers. Set up a small scale reenactment of what we're seeing with the oil platforms, for example. Like get a slightly curved surface and then put an object beyond the curvature. So say half of the mock-up oil rig, whatever you want to put there, right? Just use a toy boat or something. Make it so half of it's hidden from the observer behind the physical geometric horizon that you've set up. Okay, use a bit of perspex board or something like that. Make it slightly curved. Put something beyond the curvature so it's hidden behind the curvature, and then do whatever you want with the weather conditions, right? With the temperature, the humidity, the pressure. Do whatever you want and try to make it completely flatten out, and then have that geometric horizon appear behind the object. Now, all of a sudden, you can see the object that was physically hidden behind the physical geometric horizon. Okay, make it look completely flat, and then have that horizon that was blocking the bottom half of the object appear behind the object. Good luck with that. It's impossible. It's even stupid to suggest such a thing would be possible.
And then we must acknowledge this fact also. Our position doesn't have to fly or defy what we commonly observe throughout our human experience. We're just denying a whole bunch of lore that reinterprets our everyday experience. In essence, the points of the distinctives of a scientist's cosmology, we don't ever directly observe that, or indirectly, we don't observe that in any way, in any fashion, in any sense. We don't observe the black cosmic void. We don't observe the SE. We don't observe their perpetual telekinesis of matter, which they call gravity. The TGR doctrine, which abrogated MAM, mass attracting mass. We don't observe these vast distances to the celestial bodies. We don't observe the celestial bodies as they've been illustrated to us by our artificial devices, et cetera, et cetera.
You know what's funny,
Just
Gregory? I think the Blue Jumper made a good point in the side chat. You know, he was saying, I bet they've already done these small scale tests and withheld the results. I bet, imagine how many of these globe earthers have gone out with a super zoom camera and done long distance observations, but how many of these tests that I guarantee they've done are actually getting presented. They're purposely withholding the tests because when they go out and actually do the long distance observations, it doesn't help them. It doesn't help their argument. It just shows that they can see orders of magnitude too far. Isn't it interesting that flat earthers have countless amounts of long distance observations with P900s, P1000s, but all of these globe earthers, they don't seem to do it. They don't seem to have
exactly.
these tests. Yeah.
Exactly. Just the same routine as usual. Whether it concerns the Earth, the shape of the Earth, whether it concerns uh, the place of the Earth in the cosmos, right? So-called heliocentrism, and even heliocentrism is abrogated in their worldview. It's just Earth is in the boondocks of the cosmic void, somewhere away from the so-called great attractor. You know, as it concerns that, as it concerns, uh, what cause us living souls to be here, right? Just ignore and just basically inflict yourself with amnesia with all the evidence that doesn't complement the 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 worldview that you're already emotionally clutching to. Exactly. It's just business as usual for them. You know, here's another thing. You know, people are so incredulous and so emotionally adverse to the very possibility that only God knows how many humans, how many generations, how many assets, money, and otherwise can be utilized by so many for so long. You build all these things, you build all these institutions, you build all these devices, you build all these machines, yada yada yada, whilst being what it really is accurately called deluded about the world. A delusional worldview, a delusional cosmology. And these people, these so-called professionals, these officials, these experts, spending all this money and other assets, making all these devices, apparatuses, machines, you know, big ass towers, big ass machines. All these things cost only God knows how much money. All the while believing an asinine worldview that flagrantly flies in the face of what we actually observe and flies in the face of and defies sound argumentation. It's possible. Like, internalize that, number one. And secondly, not only is it possible, it is happening. Not only is it happening, it's likely to happen. This is a reoccurring pattern in human history. But people don't understand that when they have a false worldview, especially a false understanding of human nature. They don't acknowledge human depravity, human corruption. Maybe you might not be so bad, relatively. Humans are corrupt. Humans dedicate their lives. I mean, you hear so much in their rhetoric. They always talk about how much they're dedicating, how much the clerics or the specialists, the experts have dedicated their entire lives. You know, you can just hear the gravity, wink, wink, in their voice when they use this rhetoric. They've dedicated their entire lives to this area of knowledge, this area of expertise, and they're wrong. So they're comfortable saying that very thing about everyone else with their worldview. They're comfortable saying that about the Christians, about the Jews, about the Muslims, about the Hindus, et cetera, et cetera. But of course, they could not. It couldn't possibly be the case that they're guilty of the very same thing. Couldn't possibly be the case. Just another point of hypocrisy. There's at least 12 distinct points of hypocrisy on the part of the scientists that I've identified over the past 10 years. At least 12, and that's really being graciously underestimating. I think I'm graciously underestimating. There's at least a dozen, and it's on major points of their worldview, according to their rhetoric, not major in my estimation, major in their estimation. It's possible. Not only is it possible, it's plausible given the human track record, right? And how hypocritical that they can presume that everyone else is just so deluded to believe all these ridiculous things in Hinduism or Christianism or whatever, what have you, but they couldn't possibly be guilty of that because they just have the fact. Because they're just so tough-minded, so scrupulous. No, no, no. Especially when the vast majority of their distinctives that make up the worldview are just modern renditions of old ancient doctrines from these other worldviews that they mock. They mock the ancients while pretty much they're eclectics borrowing all sorts of doctrines from various ancients. It's ridiculous. Because it's not just about the earth. Yes, this channel is designated for talking about the earth, the shape of the earth. But that's not the most major subject. That's not the most major concern. We're not talking about geodesy just for the sake of, because geodesy is just so freaking interesting by itself now. It's interesting within the greater context of your worldview, of our worldview. The truths about the world. Origin, purpose, morality, destiny. They all have all this ire and this indignation and contempt against the institutions that advocate a theistic worldview, whatever given theistic worldview. Right? They got all these assets. This is their rhetoric, right? They got all these assets. They got all this. They got all these assets. You know, money and social capital, and you know, they have all these things. Yet they're lying to the people. They have all these assets that they could be using for good, and they're lying to the people and exploiting the people. But no, we don't do that. As the scientists, no, we don't do that. But yes, they do. Yes, they do. Guilty of the very same thing. Another point of hypocrisy. Lying to the people about the world, lying to the people about the earth, about the cosmos. Only the God knows exactly who initiated this stupid trend, this stupid tradition. Everyone else like us knows that there was someone, just don't necessarily know his or her name, most likely a man. That's it. Yeah, the world began with only truth. Truth predates lies. Truth predates lies. Someone decided to defy and abandon the truth and promulgate a lie because they hate truth. No good reason. It's not like they have a plausible, understandable reason. It's just a corrupt mind. It's a warped, corrupt person. And warped, corrupt persons, or warped, corrupt people acting according to their warped, corrupt, evil nature, deciding to convince themselves of lies, dedicate themselves to lies, assert lies, promulgate lies, push them, even resist those who refute them. Just anything and everything, anything in dedication to lies and evil. Like, think back with me. There was no reason for the globe Earth to even take off. There's no reason for it. There was nothing about our regular routine experience that suggested the Earth was a ball. Someone decided in their warped, ridiculous mind, like their mind is just warped. They just decided they were just so clever. They were just going to defy common human experience and assert these doctrines and abuse even those who are relatively clever, abuse their gifts, their God-given gifts. They're articulate, right? They're educated on other areas of knowledge. They can articulate those facts. And so they use their rhetorical prowess, they abuse their rhetorical prowess, and with no regard for the well-being of others, exploiting the gullible, et cetera, they promulgate these things. They gather enough disciples, enough followers, so they have a credibility base, and then they start repeating, and it grows, it spreads like a virus, very analogous to a virus, an infection. Patient zero spreads to another person, and then these people, and then to those people, and then out and out and out and out and out. Like even in their lore, like when you study the world from their worldview, right? Someone didn't have the bright idea the Earth was a ball until what? In their anthropology, in their history, in their chronology, several 100,000 years after the beginning of human existence. 250, 300,000 years of human existence up to now, from the beginning up to now. Wind back the clock, 2,500 years to classical antiquity with Eratosthenes and Plato, not Plato, Eratosthenes and not Eratosthenes, but Pythagoras, excuse me, right? Wind the clock back from our point to there. So that's we'll just say 200, 280,000 years, right? 280,000 years of human history according to their worldview. Someone didn't have the bright idea the Earth was a ball until then. Or at least you could also say no recorded history.
And then Gregory, how long did it take before they figured out the heliocentric system?
Right, that part too. And then after Pythagoras, you fast forward what? Fast forward 2,000 years, right? 6th century BC all the way up to 1600s, right? Or 16th century rather, excuse me, 1500s with Copernicus. So what? More than 290,000 years of human history. Someone didn't have the right idea, like brother just mentioned, with having the notion that the Earth is in the sun is in the center of the celestial orbits.
Yeah,
But there's even a lot of
2,000 years, right?
Say again.
So it's a bunch of idiots lived for 2,000 years between Eratosthenes and Copernicus.
or
Yeah, but
1000.
Eratosthenes or Pythagoras, yeah. Because
Yeah,
before
fictional.
Eratosthenes, there was Pythagoras.
Yeah, like, I've been studying into Pythagoras a fair bit recently, and even historians, like mathematical historians from these like prestige universities, will tell you that there's actually like almost zero proof that Pythagoras even existed or said any of the things that they claim he said. There's no original writings.
Mhm.
Um, he says that he may never even have claimed that the Earth's a globe. All of that just came like way, way after. And he was going into how he didn't even invent the Pythagorean theorem. That's absolute nonsense. He said it wouldn't have even been possible because of the concept that they had when it came to like numbering systems and things like that. He said the Greeks just loved making up these like mystical, leaders and things like that with like the pinnacle of this and that idea.
In all likelihood, it's entirely plausible. Entirely plausible.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
notion would be relative to common scientist orthodoxy. That would be like heterodox. There's orthodoxy, heterodoxy, and heresy. Orthodoxy is the common accepted doctrine that's commonly accepted to be correct. Heterodox is the other, literally heteros, other doctrine. Uh, Heterodox would be other things that are more or less considered legitimate, but are not the common, contrary to the common doctrine. And heresy is just not considered to be correct at all by virtually damn near everyone, right? So they have their own, these categories apply to their worldview too. They just don't want to talk like that, but too bad it applies so we can make sense out of their worldview because they're not going to use rhetoric that makes sense out of things. So yeah, that notion would be, that would be at most a heterodox notion, but still entirely plausible. I don't have any emotional commitment to the notion that Pythagoras was a concretely real person in history. That does not
Yeah,
matter to
this
me.
historian, he says, there probably was some guy named Pythagoras that lived somewhere. He's like, let's call him Bob Pythagoras. He's like, there may or may not have been a Bob Pythagoras that lived on this place or that place. He's like, likely someone named Pythagoras did live, but
Mhm.
when it comes to the specifics on what we're told in the classroom about Pythagoras, it is all just made up. And that's coming straight from this guy here in the side chat, Dr. Pierce Bursill Hall, University of Cambridge, and he is a mathematical historian. So even people from the mainstream, are calling bullshit on the mainstream story.
Yeah,
Crazy.
amazing. So with that factor that into our analysis. So now, with that being said, we have a doctrine, a geodesic doctrine categorically, that the Earth is a ball coming from a spurious source in antiquity, classical antiquity, right? Not even from a person who, with all this lore ascribed to them being verified by any, even the most uh, lax or inclusive historical criticism standards, right? We got Pythagoras, so called, with spurious, little to no historicity, right? Who is taught in Orthodox scientism to be the primary or most prominent initiator of spreading the notion that there is a ball and allegedly proving it. And then special persons or highlighted persons in in the common historical curricula in the average university, persons after him, right? Eratosthenes and all the rest, and da 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 da. That's where it starts. When you do just an analysis of their historical notions, their historical doctrines and their worldview. That's where it comes from. That's where it originates from. It originated from a spurious person with little to no historicity and asserted it on the basis of an aesthetic preference. Because it is known in classical Greek philosophy, classical Grecian worldview, that aesthetics was important to them, and it's important to us. Right? Aesthetics is important, but one of their aesthetic notions is that the sphere was the most perfect shape, aesthetic wise, the most perfect shape. So, given that the sphere is the most perfect shape, and the Earth is very important, and that which is most beautiful is important, then it's all in all likelihood. Excuse me, in all likelihood, the Earth is a sphere. That's where it began. That's the notion. That's
Like,
the idea that generated the whole history of this shit with about the SE, the globe Earth,
sounds like
the
a
ball Earth.
cult.
And again, in like Rayleigh just mentioned, Pythagoras was a cult leader, hence Pythagoreanism. Pythagoreanism. He promulgated primarily um, ethical doctrines in tandem with some type of metaphysic, not really a fleshed out metaphysic, with some math. Uh, that was his doctrinal system. Not really a system, but that was his doctrines that he promulgated that many subscribed to. So yes, Pythagoras or Pythagoreanism. That was the thing. And Pythagoreanism continued explicitly by name people who identify themselves as Pythagoreans for a while, for a few centuries, and then it died off because it wasn't the truth. It wasn't all that persuasive with some very wacky restrictions. But it still continues on today. Just most people are oblivious because people aren't self-conscious about their worldview, right? But the hyper emphasis upon math to a fault, like we usually hear from the scientists, that's Pythagoreanism. That's Pythagoreanism. But that's where it began. It didn't begin with someone walking it didn't begin with someone walking outside their house, and they just couldn't help but be smacked with the obvious evidence the Earth is a big ball. That's not what happened. It's not like someone woke up one day and I just want to see the entire Earth one day, and they just climbed a mountain or got into an aircraft or nothing like that. Like, nothing like that. There was no direct observation of the Earth being this humongous ball. Nothing.
Nope.
That's not how it began.
Yeah, and then people don't realize we didn't develop the technology to go higher until 1931.
It began, according to them, in their lore about history, began with someone of spurious, little to no historicity, contriving this out of his presumption of being so clever and so enlightened, even having a daimon, a demon, being enlightened by one or more spirits, right? With his aesthetic preferences. That's where it began. That's where the notion there is a ball began.
Yeah, the
And then
more I've
others
looked
thinking,
into the Pythagoras and the Pythagorean cult, it's freaking insane. Like they had some crazy rituals and crazy rules
yeah,
and belief
yeah,
systems, and they believed that Pythagoras had the ability to remember all of his past lives, and Pythagoras
hmm
himself thought that in one of his past lives he was a bird, and like all these crazy things. They believed that Pythagoras had the power to speak with animals, and they literally thought that one of his thighs was made out of gold. Like he had a golden thigh.
hmm
Apparently, that's what they
hmm
believed. He had a voice that could calm storms, and he also had the ability to be in two places at the same time.
Yep.
Crazy stuff. Yeah, this is the where the globe came from, guys.
Again, not according to us, according to the scientists, right? The average university educated person, just the average person nowadays, right? Because they don't identify themselves to be scientists of scientism, but I do. Many of us do, because we have the right. It's entirely valid to identify them by a label, so that we don't have to struggle every time we want to refer to them, because it's not just the issue about the Earth; it's the whole worldview. So the worldview that we're taught in university, in college, in damn near every so-called public education, which is the state indoctrination system. We can use a convenient label for them to make it easy to refer to them. Scientism, scientists of scientism. Okay. So the scientist, the average scientist, especially the average, university graduate, and especially these professionals that teach whatever given classes that teach some aspect of this worldview. This is what they're saying. This is what they're saying. Not from us. What they're saying. It's amazing how, when you tell them, like the average lay scientist, you have your clerics, and then you have the lay people, you have the lay devotees. The average lay scientist, especially the devout lay scientists that want to be uh, apologists for their worldview and polemicists against whatever they think is egregiously false. How we have to do so much education for them in order for them to finally have some grasp on the nature of the subject, for them to actually say something worthwhile listening to in the conversation or debate. It just goes to show even they have failed to teach each other and to discipline themselves to be epistemologically self-conscious, to actually scrutinize themselves, to actually examine their worldview. What do I believe? What actually do I believe? Do I just have these vague, wiggly, malformed, squishy notions of, like, is my worldview just a bunch of mud slapped around everywhere? Or is it actually a solid, rigid structure, so to speak? Most people have like just this rainbow swirl of a worldview. Like there's content, but it's just not structured and organized and systematized. Hmm. Interesting jumper. Interesting. I don't doubt it either. Pythagorean theorem found on clay tablet 1,000 years older than Pythagoras. Yeah. Interesting.
See? They even named it Pythagorean theorem 1,000 years before he was born.
We could easily relabel it too. It doesn't have to be called Pythagorean theorem. It doesn't have to.
Yeah, we never met the guy.
Right? Well, triangular theorem. Right? A label for that equation. Triangular theorem.
Well, they had like this crazy belief that like they kind of worship spheres and numbers and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. They believed that odd numbers are masculine, even numbers are feminine, and that 10 is divine perfection, and that spheres equal the perfect shape of the universe. And apparently that's where the spherical Earth idea gets its seed. And they believed that the planets emitted musical tones as they moved, and that the universe was literally a musical instrument. And since music was what they considered perfect and harmonious, the cosmos had to be made of perfect spheres. The metaphysical belief in what later thinkers inherited when they adopted the spherical Earth.
Yeah. So after
Crazy.
Pythagoras, Eratosthenes, for instance. Don't have to go through every person like precisely, but the majors, the major hitters, the major sages, right? In their worldview, in their line of history, in their historical doctrine. Eratosthenes. Chinese did that thing before him, right? Without the assumptions, that he did when measuring the angles with those shadows. So more weak induction. Alberuni with the mountains and shit. So since Pythagoras all the way up to what mid early 20th century, you just had a bunch of humans running around on the ground. At best, doing observations and measurements. At best, a bunch of humans on the ground, staring up the sky, and or doing some observations and measurements concerning the shape of the Earth. That's all you had. For how long? For about 2,500 years. About roughly 2,500 years since Pythagoras. That's all you had. You didn't have anyone going up away from the Earth far enough to see the entire Earth. You didn't have that. You had people standing their feet right here, staying their ass right on the ground. Only until the mid 20th century that all of a sudden technology began to accelerate in its advancement and its capabilities, which includes the ability to deceive. Then in the 60s, somehow, some group of brilliant people who they were just on the cutting edge of human evolution, yada 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 yada. They made at least one machine that could carry a team of humans away from the Earth, out of the atmosphere, into the black void. What's the point of highlighting this? It's not as though they had such a strong case for so long. Right? They needed this. I mean, there were plenty of flat earthers before the 60s. Wasn't that controversial? It wasn't as though they had such a strong argument for the SE before the so-called lunar missions. What they have? What did they have before the 1960s? What I just mentioned. Everybody standing their ass right on the ground with weak induction. At best, doing some observations and measurements. Along with some suppression of opposition. Because we are not the first to ever refute the weak inductive appeal to bottom up disappearance of ships at the horizon. We are not. You can just hear the same rhetoric that we hear today, they were saying to them back then. The same sophisticated rhetoric. Like that can happen on the horizontal Earth. Just because we see the bottom up disappearance of ships on the horizon doesn't mean that doesn't prove the Earth's a ball at all. It's not exclusively indicative of the Earth being a ball. Gnash your teeth, growl, sink your teeth in them, attack the opposition. The SE advocates, scientists. You just hear it. Bedford level experiment. Mid 1800s, mid 19th century. I mean, hell, you have the 1940s almanac, encyclopedia, excuse me, 1940s encyclopedia, late 1940s, like 1947, something like that. Talk about the Earth being a flat with the firmament. 1940s. Weren't we so advanced and yada 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 and enlightened and beyond the medieval superstition? Da 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 da. No, no, delete all that. No, they didn't have shit until they decided to perform an elaborate deception to up the ante with their deception in the 1960s, and here we are today. So we got to be bothered with that shit. Because of course, in theory, in principle, it's obviously a strong appeal, almost damn near, settles the issue. If indeed we have traveled so far away from the Earth, turned around, got a few pictures, came back, show and tell the world. Well, okay, yeah. Problem is, it didn't happen. Problem is, there's all sorts of errors in their metaphysics. In order for that supposed historical event to take place, right? The refutation, all that shit stands upon TGR, and TGR is refuted. I could easily say the refutation again. I'm not going to do it right now. TGR is refuted. The ontologically erroneous, false cause. Not even verifiable, even if the cause was really a cause. So no. The historical notion that a pseudo historical notion that stands upon a void. I'm not even going to grant them midair. Nope. No solid foundation stands upon a void. So take that off the table. They don't have that. So what else do they have if they don't have the actual direct observation of the Earth being a ball with some photographic evidence and or video? What do they have? Again, like we just mentioned, the same weak induction and or from the concept. The same weak induction. I mean, we are not the first to suggest. I refuse to believe that we're so clever that we're the first to suggest that someone actually just do an observation, like do the operation, do the measurement of the distance to the geometric horizon. So the so-called in their rhetoric, the SEH. We're not the first to suggest that. After all this time, such a thing has yet to be presented. After what, since Pythagoras? Since Pythagoras, for more than 2,500 years, the demonstration of the measurement to the geometric horizon from any point of any given observer standing anywhere has yet to be presented. If I was the scientist, if I was the devout scientist and want to be apologist for this worldview, especially on this point of doctrine, that's what I would be running to. Cut to the chase, cut the bullshit, run right to that observation, get it done, present it. Hasn't been done, not by one. And we know it hasn't been done because they made such a hoopla. We know they've demonstrated that they can haul ass, that they can hustle to do what they want to do. They hauled ass, they got the asses moving to present the so-called FE, final experiment, which they think settles the issue. So they ran to that, thinking that settles the issue, that it's over, the debate is done. They didn't run to demonstration of measurement to the geometric horizon. Now let's travel our asses all the way to a frozen wasteland and watch the sun run around the sky. That's what they think is going to settle the issue. Those people who did that operation. Why didn't they spend all those assets, money and otherwise, on giving a demonstration of the measurement to the geometric horizon, the actual exclusively indicative thing to break the symmetry for the globe Earth? Why? Why waste your money with that? Why not rightfully wisely spend it on that? Because they can't. They cannot complete that task. You cannot measure the distance of them that don't exist. I mean, hell, you can try, and then you can fuck around and find out you're not gonna find the distance to it because it don't exist nowhere. Nowhere. So little methodical step-by-step analysis of a synopsis of their history from Pythagoras all the way up to now. Only until the mid 20th century did they have something that actually is a much stronger appeal, other than the weak induction for the centuries, millennia, 2.5 millennia since Pythagoras. It's ridiculous. People don't understand how weak their position is. They don't take the time to think that through. Some people already know about this little thing that I can say, but whoever's listening, maybe not. But primarily the damn near certain confidence that so many have in these scientists is not because they are so diligent with presenting such rigorous and precise and succinct, sound argumentation for their worldviews. No, you baffle people with technical jargon mixed in with actual demonstration of things. You mix it together and you make sure it blends together. Because, like oil and water, you can't really mix them together, you can't blend them. You can still see, you can still distinctly recognize the oil from the water, right? But if you blend it together, then of course, then it's more difficult to see. So it's a blend of actual applications, successfully achieved applications, with their scientism and a bunch of arcane rhetoric that most people don't understand and could not give a fuck to bother themselves to study, and public stigma, you know, stigma, common social stigma uh, with contradicting or even just being skeptical and asking questions of uh, their points of orthodoxy. That's really what produces the damn near certain, virtually certain confidences only people have in them. That's why it seems so ridiculous for people to question them. But things are changing. I mean, what I just previously said like 5 seconds ago, that's still there, but it's decreasing in its intensity nowadays, which is good. So it's getting a bit better. That's becoming a bit less. That's becoming a bit weaker, so it's getting a bit better, but it's still there. Like I remember hearing a clip on what is it, Fox News. One of the anchors was like, I remember her saying, I should find the clip, but basically, uh, she herself is still like, a lay person, lay subconscious adherent to, or a subscriber of scientism, you know, not self-consciously in so many words, But I remember this the regular panel members on this Fox News program. She was saying, "This is not working with the people, right? This snobbish, uh, disrespectful, condescending, insulting rhetoric, where you just insult and mock people who don't believe these things." I think they won't even talk about the Earth, but it was irrelevance to like, you know, vaccine and Earth and trust and authority and medical professionals and all this stuff together. But basically, you have to eventually mention it because it's happening. The change has happened. Obviously, it's happened and it's still happening, and it is not working for the people. I mean, just on the first level, like when you're totally unfamiliar with all this, you're not been into this for a while. You're just a common regular person. On the outside looking in, being introduced to this, you see the condescending, snobbish, disgusting shit from the advocates of scientism, the scientists, against the people who at least just question, express some doubts, let alone at most those who articulate what they think are refutations and or alternatives, right, against scientism and alternatives to scientism on whatever given subject, and just the nasty fucking rhetoric from the scientists that people are taking notice to that. They're tired of this, especially when it's something like with medical stuff and how it affects people who are precious to them. Okay, so you're saying these things, but I've seen these things. Right? I kind of doubt what you're saying, and I really have some real serious concerns because I've seen some things and I've heard about some other things. I've seen some other things with other people. But hey, why are you talking to me with such aggression and hostility and disrespect? Why are you being so nasty to me? Right? That's happened to so many. Only God knows how many. Especially about surface of the earth, shape of the earth. So in a way, the scientists are the greatest producers of apostates, the greatest producers of apostates from their worldview. Because they're just so nasty. Because their pride is so feeble. How dare you defy? How dare you question? How dare you doubt? How dare you? How stupid of you. Yeah, that's happening. Jumper. You think you're smarter than the people I believe are smarter? And that's in reply to people just asking questions. Asking questions out of some healthy skepticism. I mean, it's ironic. I mean, the scientists are the same people who yap about the necessity and benefit of being skeptical and yada yada, being tough minded, and then when those same virtues, at least as far as they articulate them, are applied to their own worldview, then they become indignant. Have a healthy skepticism, except against my worldview. Don't you dare irritate me with your skeptical questions against my worldview. Don't you dare convey to me in any way that you doubt my worldview, especially on cosmology. Scientism is not the default. That's how we were raised. That's how we were raised. It's just the facts. Like these are the natural conclusions and insights that we come to when we abandon our silly uh, notions and any other type of theistic worldview. Basically, in so many words, they don't really say it that way, but in so many words, that's what we were inundated with our entire lives. No, it's not. No, it isn't. It's also difficult to really say when scientism began, because scientism again is just a, a Frankenstein of a worldview. It consists of distinctives with more or less a modern contemporary rendition of ancient doctrines, borrowed from a wide variety of other places. Right? They take from the Babylonians, they take from the Indians, they take from the Grecians, they take from the Egyptians, they take from all sorts of places. That's eclecticism. That's the term for that. That's eclecticism. So really, scientism is a Frankenstein result of eclectic uh, gatherings of these various doctrines, and then is the common set of doctrines that is taught for the past what uh, what I'll say 500 years, 5 centuries. Because it indeed has evolved. It hasn't been a strict set for 2,500 years or whatever. It's been like that. There's been a core set of distinctives that were then added on top of, more added into this group of doctrines that we can now distinctly identify to be scientism. If I was to articulate it precisely with an analysis of basically the evolution of scientism in the history of philosophy. There's that too. Yeah. What I call the phantom scientist magisterium. In Romanism, Romanist Christianism, there's the magisterium. Those are concretely real humans. You can identify them. They actually exist on the earth. Right? They actually congregate in particular locations. You actually see them all in one room. If they all stand together in one room, you can see them all. No such thing with scientism, but they really want such a thing to exist. They really do. That's why you hear them talk about the experts, the experts, right? As though there's some greater or lesser number of these university graduate professionals sitting somewhere in some room or in some building somewhere, and they meet together and they just, you know, they just meet together, discuss, and get on the same page, and they basically guide the rest of the world, or at least all the rest of the academicians. There is no such thing. Dr. Kerry Mullis knew better too. He explicitly said that. He explicitly attacked. He explicitly exploded that notion. And the documentary was on AIDS and things. It wasn't even about the shape of the Earth. But yeah, he, like many others, have recognized that that's a one of the many mental infections that runs around in the scientist's head, as though there's these experts somewhere, this unidentified, unidentifiable, unenumerated, unquantified number of experts, these scholars, these academicians that just have it all together or have mastered so much so that they can be the sages that guide everyone else. There is no such thing. Hell, the Romanist Christians barely even have that, and they actually have a set of concretely real humans who occupy the offices of cardinal and all the rest in ecclesiology, let alone the scientists who don't have any such specific rigid structure like that. There is no such thing. It's really, if there was to be a comparison, it's really more analogous to um, even the Hasidic Jews, right? In Judaism, the vast majority of Jews, they don't have like essential supreme authority like Romanists do with the Pope, or even the Eastern Orthodox with the first among equals. They don't have that. Really, you just have the whole number of Jews, and in whatever given local area, they're given rabbi or set of rabbis that lead that local area, but none single cleric or group of clerics that preside over and guide and govern all Jews everywhere on the earth. No such thing. Same thing with the scientists. The thing that would be most close to that would be like the members of the Royal Society, and even they don't even function in that capacity. They're not even competent to function in that capacity. The closest thing to their phantom scientist magisterium would be the members of the Royal Society, which have been very prominent in the development and promulgation of their distinctives in their worldview and their current practices. But even they can't function in that capacity. They're not competent for that. Too many freaking academicians, too many freaking students, too many freaking assets, too many freaking apparatuses. There's just too much shit to keep track of. And especially with a people that is as defiant and irreverent for authority as the scientists, as much as they always talk about how authoritative and reliable their authorities are. So yeah, how dare you defy the group of experts that doesn't exist? You deny what the scientists say, right? What they mean is you defy this phantom group of university graduate professionals that guide all academicians and students everywhere on the truth about the world. Yeah, sure. We defy this fictitious group of people that you wish existed but doesn't actually exist. Can't name one. Can't name one. Right? With the Romanists, right off the bat, can you name the Pope? Pope Leo, right? Bishop Leo, right? Very easy, very simple. I can't do any such thing but the scientists. Their phantom magisterium. Can't name one single member. Oh, there you are. Well, since you're awake now, you want to hop on the party?
I got stuff to do.
Okay. Well, hell. It was one of them hopping to the channel?
Well, at this point in time, in this very moment, yeah.
I basically just had a podcast moment here in the channel. Because, there's a YouTube live stream, so yeah. I went through several subjects. I'm not going to recount them all. That's too tedious.
Oh, so I missed it. Sad.
Mm. You missed it live, but you can rewind it back. It was only like the last thing I just said was like less than a minute ago. Like the last point of my whole series of comments was like less than a minute ago. So if you could rewind it and hear me. So really, when you engage the given scientist who loves to talk about the scientist, how dare you defy the scientists know better than you. Okay, name one. All right, name one. And really, what you're going to get in all likelihood is only a handful of names. You're not going to get a wide variety of names. They're really not as well studied in their worldview as they like to imagine, or they like to make themselves seem, by the way. That's also a part of their rhetoric routine, so to speak. It's a whole lot of rhetoric full of bloviation. That's the word for it. It's bloviation. It's to make yourself seem more formidable, seem smarter, seem more informed, seem to have far more facts than you actually do. They're banking on your ignorance. That's what liars of all types and all in any given worldview, any given circle, any given category of worldview do. They come at you strong rhetoric, hoping and banking on saying, all sorts of things very assertively, hoping that you won't know. It's a gamble. It's a gamble. It really exposes how undiligent they are, but it's a gamble. They're gambling their credibility on bloviation. Because hopefully the best outcome that they're looking for is that you don't know how to reply. You're going to reply honestly. You're going to reply honestly because you're not as deceitful and trying to, all like that. You're going to reply honestly. You're going to admit that you don't know, and they're going to sink their teeth into that, right? And then they're going to talk down at you. They're going to spitefully talk at you. They're going to presume to admonish you, and basically just jam the knife in and twist it verbally, so to speak. That's what they're hoping is the best outcome that'll happen. So
You already know I've been through it. Most people that I talk, okay, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of the people that I've talked to on the subject, they, as soon as they find out that I'm coming from flat Earth perspective, they shut down. They no longer want to hear the conversation, become very rude and disrespectful. Yeah, yeah.
and that again, that's a programmed response. What that is a programmed response. And it's not even self-conscious. It's not like a entirely self-controlled decision to reply that way. Because when you ask them, they can barely articulate anything as to a reason why they feel as strongly as they do, why they're so strongly adverse as they do. No, we're conditioned to react that way subconsciously. They infected our very subconscious to be so averse to that notion, to be adverse to the truth, we know in hindsight. Conditioning. Right? What is so abhorrent about having skepticism about the shape of the earth that we've been taught. What is so abhorrent about asking these scrutinizing questions to see if the the people who believe the earth is a ball actually know this? Like, what is so abhorrent about that? What is so abhorrent about the very proposition the earth is, is has a horizontal surface? Right? It's one thing for it to be false. It's another thing for you to react with such abhorrence. That's the word for it. Just this such profoundly strong disgust and indignation and anger.
I was always taught that if you're on the position, if you're on the side of truth, if what you know or what you think you know is absolutely true, then you reacting in a poor fashion towards someone who doesn't believe that doesn't look good. Because usually someone who reacts that way is lying. A liar gets caught up in a lie, and now they're angry because you caught them in a lie. That's where that anger is coming from. Now, that's not saying that anybody who doesn't affirm the position that you and I have is lying. I'm just saying that that reaction is very synonymous with it. It's very synonymous with this is possibly not true. You say you believe it. I've come up with something that contradicts your belief. Or not, I've come up with something that contradicts your belief, but I believe in something that contradicts your belief. And now you're angry.
And then
You see where I'm going with it? It doesn't look
yeah,
good.
yeah. And now let me be charitable to them, because I can actually understand the positions of people, right? I can actually understand positions that I don't subscribe to, that I don't believe. Like, from their perspective, this is as flagrantly conspicuous. The Earth being a ball is as flagrantly conspicuous and established, proven fact that's beyond any rational doubt at all. Just like 2 + 2 = 4. Yeah, I get it. I get it. Problem is that true? Okay, if this is indeed the case, then it could withstand some scrutinizing questions. Problem is, it doesn't. Problem is, it doesn't withstand these scrutinizing questions. Right, so when you actually begin the task of scrutinizing, verifying the proposition, it actually is not as tenable and rock solidly robust as we were inundated our entire lives to believe in the first place. That's obviously a learning lesson with a general principle. In this world, we are convinced of many things, but just because we're so convinced of them doesn't mean that they are actually true. Even if they have some very credible and convincing, sophisticated rhetoric to support them, there are some notions that people are strongly convicted of, with some rather seemingly credible and persuasive, convincing, sophisticated rhetoric to support the given proposition, the given notion, and it's still false. I mentioned earlier how they are entirely unreluctant to basically criticize everyone else, the scientists, unreluctant to criticize everyone else, especially who believe a theistic worldview as being just deluded. Like, yeah, these many people believe these things, and they believe them for many years. They're deluded. They've been deluded for a long time, including their scholars. Right? They're unreluctant to say that about others who are not adherents to scientism. That can possibly be the case with their worldview. So when they ask why the lie, well, the same thing that you accuse all the other professionals, scholars, sages, experts of the other worldviews besides yours. How about apply that to your clerics, your sages, your experts, your doctors, quote unquote? Easy, simple. The same reason you think is obviously the case with everyone else that doesn't subscribe to scientism, that doesn't believe scientism. Apply that to you. How about that for a lie? Right? The Christian cause, the Pope, especially, they just want to dominate. They just want to have all the power to themselves, all the assets to themselves, and control everyone else. Okay, your clerics want to do the same. And indeed, that's what happened. Indeed, we know that's what happened because the 20th century is entire proof of that. All the tyrants of the 20th century, all the dictators of the 20th century, they explicitly professed in so many words, made it official doctrine, official state doctrine in their public school systems in every category, like the Soviet Union, right? And they applied it and made the 20th century the bloodiest century in history, but more than all the previous 19 put together. All that bloodshed was the product of scientism. So yeah, scientism works. Yeah, it certainly works with all their yapping and emphasis on pragmatism. It works. Trust and believe it works. They have an entire century of bloodshed to prove that it works. It works for the mass murder of so many who did not bow the knee to whatever given dictator, to whatever given tyrant. Yeah, it works. Hey, brother. They're very fond of this presumption about themselves that they're just these altruistic truth seekers. We just want to know the truth. We just want to know the truth and be a benefit to mankind. No, you don't. No, you don't. Even if you're not one of the dictators, even if you're just one of the common people, you have the same tendencies, the same errors, the same frailties. Because you say that now, and then when you get into the debate, you pull all sorts of sophistry. You speak nasty and disrespectful and all the rest. So no, you don't. You become so easily vexed hearing scrutinizing questions and/or refutations against your beliefs. No, you don't. You're not an altruist. You don't only want the facts. You're not morally pure. No, you're not. So from the layperson all the way up to the top academicians, all the way up to the most powerful politicians and tycoons, these adherents of scientism. You're not going to realize these things from their worldview. If you are convinced of their worldview, you're not going to recognize these things. Most of them. You at least not very you're very unlikely to do so. Now, some people are so exhausted and depleted in every way, not just mentally, not just emotionally, spiritually, in every way, depleted and exhausted and just drained from scientism. They abandon it. Well, it's not working in a good way for me, in any way for me. Right? That's why so many of these scientists are nihilists. That's why so many of these scientists don't believe they have any value. Nothing is of any value. There is no truth. There is no meaning. There is no purpose. There's no justice. Yada 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 yada. Right? This dreadful of a nightmare of a worldview. Right? Just the very content of the worldview. When you think through it consistently, think through it coherently, acknowledging the entailments of their distinctives. Some people are driven away from scientism, and good enough. It's good. But usually they just go to another error that's more pleasant. But then the rest go to the truth. It's not just about the Earth. It's not just about the shape of the Earth.